Time remains an intriguing mystery. Scientists believe that it must be a dimension, but we can only move in one direction and one speed through it. The laws of nature seem to allow for objects to move backwards through time as well, but they never do. Or do they? Although time travel appears to be science fiction for now, these 4 stories may make you think otherwise. This is Unveiled, and today we're taking an extraordinary look at 4 more time travel stories that will make you question reality. Do you need the big questions answered? Are you constantly curious? Then why not subscribe to Unveiled for more clips like this one, and ring the bell for more thought-provoking content. The concept of time travel is a staple of science fiction and remains tantalizing thanks to the way that scientific theories actually support it. Some forms of time travel have been experimentally proven. According to Albert Einstein's theory of special relativity, time moves relative to an observer. This can result in time dilation, the difference in the elapsed time measured by clocks traveling at different velocities. Experiments have tested this theory and proven that time dilation really occurs. It means that astronauts aboard the International Space Station, for example, actually age more slowly compared to the rest of us due to the craft's high orbital speed. If you were to travel through space at about 90% the speed of light, time would move 2.6 times slower in your own experience. At higher speeds, it would slow down even more. When it comes to protons hurtling around at very close to the speed of light in the Large Hadron Collider, 1 second for them is 11 months for us. Someone traveling at that speed through space could travel 100 years into the future while aging by mere minutes. Time travel to the past is another matter. It seems like it may be theoretically possible, but would require a wormhole through space-time. So, are these stories real, or just hoaxes designed to attract attention? The first is also one of the most bizarre, and it concerns an alleged top-secret governmental program. In 2004, Seattle attorney Andrew Basiago came out with an extraordinary claim. Between the ages of 7 and 12, he was a time traveler, or chrononaut, training with the US government. The program, codenamed Project Pegasus, was allegedly run by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, in the 1970s and 80s. Basiago claims that children were used in the experiments because their bodies were better at adapting to the strains of time travel. He also specified that he had been present at the dates and locations of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address in 1863 and assassination in 1865. As proof, he identified himself as a boy in a photograph taken at Gettysburg. The technology supposedly came from none other than renowned inventor Nikola Tesla and involved using tunnels of radiant energy to travel to different time periods. But that's not even the end of the story, because it manages to get even crazier. In 2011, William Stillings claimed that he too was part of the same training program. Basiago and Stillings asserted that teleportation has already been invented, and scientists have used it to visit Mars. They say they were teleported to the Red Planet with none other than a teenage Barack Obama, who would years later go on to become President of the United States. However, time travel isn't always deliberate. There's also a supposed phenomenon of time slips, when someone accidentally slips into either the past or future with no idea how. And this is exactly what allegedly happened in our next story. Royal Air Force Commander Sir Robert Victor Goddard claimed he experienced a time slip during a flight in 1935. Having been ordered to inspect an abandoned airfield near Edinburgh, he arrived and surveyed the area, finding it disused and in disrepair. Everything was fine until he attempted to leave. At that point, his plane was engulfed in a massive storm, and he was forced to fly back over the airfield again. Except this time, Goddard says it had somehow transformed into a bustling airbase full of mechanics and yellow planes. 4 years later, the airfield was rebuilt and redeveloped, and RAF training planes were painted yellow instead of silver. So, had Goddard briefly seen the future? As icing on the cake, when he later returned to the site, Goddard claims that he had seen one of the planes present during that first mysterious flyby, but hadn't been able to identify it then. Turns out, it was a Miles Magister model aircraft, which only went into production in 1937, 2 years after Goddard's experience. Another strange story involving a time slip, however, contains not one, but 2 victims of forced time travel who apparently fell into the slip together. In 1932, the German journalist J. Bernard Hutton and his photographer companion Joachim Brandt were tasked by their newspaper to write a story on a shipyard in Hamburg, Germany. They arrived, took photos, interviewed workers, and were prepared to leave when they heard the sound of airplanes. Looking upward, they found the sky filled with warplanes. The city's anti-aircraft guns sprang into life, raining fire on the planes as bombs began to burst around the 2 men. They ran into their car with destruction around them and fire lighting up the warehouses, Brandt capturing photos the entire time. They passed a security guard who told them to get away as fast as possible, so they did. But as they were driving away in their car, they noticed the sky began to clear. As they looked back at the shipyard, everything was back to normal. No warplanes or fire at all. Checking their pictures afterward, they were surprised to see nothing strange and no signs of conflict. They were forced to forget the event. But 11 years later, during World War II, Hutton heard that there had been an air raid on a shipyard in Hamburg, and upon seeing the photographs, he was in awe to discover it looked exactly like the vision he had seen over a decade ago. And finally, our last story takes us back to secret government experiments in the US. The Montauk Project might not be an especially familiar name, but you're almost certainly familiar with the TV show that used it as an inspiration, Stranger Things. The real-life Montauk is actually a conspiracy theory that alleges the US government once ran tests on abducted children to research things like time travel and telekinesis. It originates with the somewhat questionable account of Preston B. Nichols, who in 1992 authored a book with Peter Moon about his alleged experiences named The Montauk Project: Experiments in Time. In the book, Nichols claims that he recovered lost memories of having worked on the project as a researcher in a bunker in Camp Hero State Park on Montauk Point in New York. Nichols says children were subjected to paranormal tests. Nichols also claims that a time portal was successfully opened to the year 1943 during the Philadelphia experiment, an alleged project in which the destroyer escort USS Eldridge was accidentally transported through space-time. The workers on board that ship supposedly went insane as a result, and some, it's alleged, had even fused with the boat when it rematerialized. After seeing a science fiction film about the event, a man named Al Bielek claimed to have witnessed the whole thing too, having also recovered lost memories. What's your verdict? Are any of these stories real examples of time travel? One reason that people believe them might be because the government does have a shady past when it comes to secret and controversial experiments. Just consider MKUltra, the CIA's human experimental program that ran from 1953 to 1973. It involved attempts to establish mind control at detention camps, colleges, and hospitals using LSD, hypnosis, and torture. Victims included prisoners, patients, drug addicts, prostitutes, and the general public. So sometimes bizarre stories can end up being true. Is that what's happening here? Were any of these stories grounded in reality, or are they all elaborate hoaxes? Because those are 4 more time travel stories that will make you question reality. What do you think? Is there anything we missed? Let us know in the comments. Check out these other clips from Unveiled, and make sure you subscribe and ring the bell for our latest content.